Well, hello. Live video tonight because I'm sticking with my routine. Apologies that I didn't do a live video last week as promised. My husband had COVID, so we all were housebound. He's much better now, which is great. And we're all back and out and back into action sewing for classes. For videos. But tonight I had originally promised to do bias tape, a demonstration, but I left my little mini iron at home and it's hard to do on the big one under the camera. So I went at the last minute, panicked, what am I going to do? But those of you who know me know that last minute is where I live. So I thought, let's do something cool on the Overlocker, but you can also do this on the sewing machine. We're going to learn how to put ribbing into the neck of a t-shirt. And tonight I am going to do it on a little baby's onesie. Firstly, because it's quick and you don't have to wait too long for me to go around and do all the seams. But secondly, sewing little kids stuff, even if you don't have kids, is a great and inexpensive way to get practice. If it works, then you don't have kids, you can put it in the lifeline bin, winner. If it doesn't work, you spend a couple of bucks and you're not desperately upset. So what you will need tonight is a couple of baby onesies. Now, you want to make sure, or little t-shirts, and you want to make sure that you have a neckline, which is a full round neck. Now, sometimes they have a little crossover shoulder. That's too hard for you for starters, so don't do that. So a little round neckline is what you're going to need. And look, you can pick these up, I think I did, from my Best and Less and places like that for not very much money. But these sort of things are all over op shops. Couple of bucks. You'd be doing the op shop a favor by giving them the money instead of Kmart. But also there's a little place around the corner in the building where So This and That was called, I think, the Rusty Zip, and they sell all pre-loved kids clothes as well. So that's an easy stop in, park out the front, grab a couple of little t-shirts so you can get practicing. So you need a baby onesie and you will need something called ribbing. So we're going to slow down for a second and talk about what ribbing is. Now, those of us who've been kicking around for a while, well, I'll move my hand while I'm picking this up because it's not very good television. You will remember a couple of cool shops that really sort of set us up in our sewing learning was Knitwit. There was all sorts of Knitwit sewing classes that focused on just stretch fabrics. And also, I think the other one was Just Knits, and there were Just Knit shops everywhere that only sold stretch fabric. It is a shame that they are gone because stretch fabric is by far the easiest thing to sew once you get going, because stretch fabric is incredibly forgiving. If you don't quite line up in the edges, you can just stretch it and snip it and no one's ever going to know. What becomes tricky is, working out how to do that on your sewing machine. I've done a thing on sewing on stretch before. You can go back and find that video. I'm going to recap it on your Overlocker tonight. All right, so when it comes to stretch fabrics, and a shout out to my mum who was a huge, big fan of stretch sewing and taught me everything I know about stretch. There's a few different types kicking around out there, but these days it's all pretty much the same. But the two big variants are normal stretch fabric, which is stretchy, stretch. And again, I apologize for the navy. I didn't think really well when I bought that fabric for sample sewing. And then you have rib fabric. Now, if I zoom in nice and close, can you see that? So this is literally like a rib. See that? It's like, when you knit, it's purl plain, purl plain, purl plain. That's what your rib fabric looks like. And it's designed to be really stretchy so that you can put it over your head and then boop, it'll pop back into shape and hold your neckline shut. So if you're going to give this a shot, go to your fabric shop. If you've got a nice little fabric shop that sells dressmaking fabrics, get rib from them. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a trip to Spotlight to get it. So ribbing is what you want. And you don't need much. Ribbing is a little bit expensive per meter, but you only need like half a meter. It'll last you ages and ages and ages. And in fact, ribbing is a little bit like socks. Do you know how you have that pair of socks as your favorite? It's been in your drawer for 10 years. You put them on and they just don't stretch anymore. That will happen to your ribbing one day. So don't go crazy and buy too much. Buy just enough so you can practice and get started. Cool? All right, so ribbing. Now, the thing about ribbing is it doesn't stretch this way. It only stretches spectacularly that way, so that's its purpose. And ribbing has a right side and a wrong side. In many cases, it's quite obvious. You can see quite a clear ribbing on one side whilst a bit reluctant on the other. we want to make sure you identify the right side and put it right side out. Won't change the way it functions, will change the way it looks. All right, so let's get started. So I said you'll need a baby onesie, ribbing. You're also going to need good pins, and I bang on about good pins all the time, but as you start sewing stretch fabric, good sharp pins will go in the stretch fabric better and make the job easier. Duro marker pen, you know I love it, and sharp scissors. Nice sharp scissors will make things easier tonight, and a tape measure. Groovy? Let's get started. So the mission is, just clear the deck, the mission is to take off this ribbing off of the shirt already. So I got a pair of scissors and I pre-cut this one. You know, I'm not normally a fan of here's one I prepared earlier, but I'm looking through the camera and I'm a bit afraid it'll be wobbly if I try and cut that. So I cut it beforehand. But what you're going to do, and this is why you need good sharp scissors, is you're going to just get in really close to the rib, and we're just going to go ahead and cut around. Now, if you wanted to, you could unpick that instead, but you know, we're talking a matter of maybe, you know, a tiny bit of fabric. So for this exercise, we're just going to cut it off. Now, as we cut it off, you'll notice that your shoulder seams here are quite thick. So just cut them as neatly as you can. And we're just going to be mindful of these, make sure that there's no loose thread sticking out, and then just trim them off once we're done. Cool? So snip, 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 snip. Magic trick that everyone does on their Facebook videos. Boom. There's one all cut away. So, easy part. Of course it is. I hear you think, now Penny, that's not so hard. What do I do next? What we need to do now is get the right amount of ribbing to go around this neckline. Now, we're going to measure around here, and without stretching this, so being careful not to stretch it, we're just going to start at one shoulder seam and just shimmy around. Hang on a second. I apologize, I got something sticky tape stuck on my thumbnail. It's driving me crazy. There we go. So we're going to just measure around the outside of the neck, just tipping the tape measure around the outside, not stretching the neck, and measure all the way around to where we started, and write that down on a piece of paper. And in this instance, this is 48 centimeters. It actually blows your mind when you talk about kids stuff once you start talking necklines, because 48 centimeters sounds huge, but you know, so's kids' heads. All right, so 48 centimeters is the distance that we need to fill in with our rib. Now, if we get our rib and cut it out so that it is 48 centimeters, then there's no pull on the rib to keep the neckline closed. And this is something a lot of people, when they make clothes for themselves, get wrong, because you're a little bit shy about making it too small. But if you make it too big, it's quite saggy and gappy. So unfortunately, this is a little bit of trial and error, because, for example, here's one I did earlier to check and make sure I knew what the hell I was doing, if I could remember everything right. And this rib, can you see how coarse and reluctant to bounce back that rib is? So that rib there would require a little bit more than this incredibly ply rib here. So you are unfortunately going to have to do a little bit of a test sew on some scrap fabric first if you are a bit nervous. But if you stick to this rule, I think we're going to be okay. So 48 centimeters is your neck size. We want our ribbing to equal 3/4 in length of that neck opening. So in this case, we're going to divide that number by 4, which is 12. And then we're going to times it by 3, which is 36. And we're going to make our piece of rib 36 centimeters in length. And here is also one I prepared earlier. So there it is. This little bit of rib now is 36 centimeters in length, and we're going to put that around there. Cool? So the maths on that again, rib here in this instance for baby stuff and most everyday things, we're going to get that rib and cut it so that it is 3/4 of the opening length. Cool? Done. All right, chuck this over here. Let's get our overlocker over. Now, I'm doing on the overlocker tonight because I love my overlocker, but I couldn't find one of my gloves. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to 80s it up and just make them odd. We're going to fold this together and stitch it. Now we want to make sure we have the right side out, and as you can see, this is much more ribby than in here. So this is right sides together, and stitching it in our overlocker or your sewing machine. We're just going to stitch straight down here. You ready? All right, foot pedal, let's do it. You see okay? It might move in a bit more. Here we go. So with your overlocker, we always just want to cut just a little bit off. Always just a little hair off. Now the thing is about rib versus, well, stretch versus woven, is if you're cutting a couple of millimeters out, it doesn't matter. Trim it. And there we have step 1, well, step 2, done. We're going to trim off these loose little bits here. And it doesn't matter that we just snip them off. We don't have to backwards or forwards or anything, because these will go into the next seam. So they're not going to have to worry about coming undone. Now, we're going to get this rib and we're going to fold it over. So we now have right sides out. So you can see how that's starting to look like your rib on your t-shirt. But you'll notice here that when I fold this, this is really chonky. Chonk, 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 chonk. And it's going to be a little bit of hard work, not so much for your overlocker to get through it, but to get up to it. It's going to stretch it a bit trying to get over that lump. So to overcome that, I'm going to show you a trick my mum taught me. We're going to find the halfway mark and we're going to just snip with our super sharp scissors. We're going to snip until that first row of stitching, but we're not going to snip that first row. So just snip like that. And then what that lets us do is it lets us switch back that seam so that one goes this way, one goes that way, and then we fold it over, and now we have nowhere near as much lump. Cool? So that step there, not necessarily just for ribbing, anything where you're going to fold it over and you have a seam, that's a handy little tip. So we're going to do that and then pin it. Pins, pins, pins. I was lecturing you about them, and where did I put them? Seriously, I literally have not gotten up from here. Oh, there they are. Okay. All right, so we're going to pin that. All right, now stay tuned. The next bit requires patience, and it's one of those things where I always think I can just skip it, and I always regret it. So we're going to patiently pin and measure. We're going to do a technique we call quartering, and we're going to find the quarter mark all the way around on this piece of rib. So with this guy we've just done pinned here, fold it in half neatly and pin here. That's our halfway mark. Put a pin in. And then we're going to fold it out the other way, and I might do it on the table. Can you guys see that okay? We're going to line up these two pins here, and that gives us, or zoom in, that gives us the quarter mark here. See that? Quarter weight. Flip it around like so, and then we're going to do it likewise over here. Again, finding that quarterway mark, just there. All right, so now we have quartered that. As you go on, you could get away with just that. But because you're new and you're doing this for the first couple of times, we're actually going to find the halfway mark between those quarters again and divide it into eighths. And just making sure that we're joined up on the edges here. So we're going to mark the eighths all the way around. I'll do it really quick so you guys aren't getting bored and wondering what's going on in Reacher. Have you guys seen that new TV show, Reacher? It's pretty great. All right, so around we go. Now also too, while I'm pinning this, we're talking neck bands at the moment, but there's no reason why you can't do this as armbands around the arms, sleeves, and indeed waistbands around the bottom of a t-shirt or a hoodie. All right, so that is done in eighths. Sorry guys, one of those things where it's just laborious, I just got to do it. All right, so that is now pinned into eighths. So that's been done into half, and then half again, then half again to give us those 8 bits. Cool, done. And now step, whatever, I've lost count here. We're now going to do the same thing with our shirt. Now it's tempting to think that, first of all, we're going to find the front and back half. That's easy. We're going to fold it in half, and we're going to pin the back halfway mark. We're going to put a pin in the front halfway mark, like so. And that's front and back halfway mark done. So it's tempting to think that this is the halfway mark for either side, but it actually isn't. Because the front is lower than the back, you're going to need to roll the front up so it is the same height as the back. And if you have a look at our shoulders, that actually gives us a halfway mark here, or quarter mark now. So we're going to put a pin there. It's on a very common thing people do there. They accidentally treat the shoulders as a quarter mark, and then it makes the rib really tight at the back and really loose at the front. So we're just going to mark that there, and like so here. And now that's done, come on Penny, you can do it. We're going to quickly find that quarter mark again, or 1/8 mark now, between those. As I said, later on, once you get a little bit more experience under your belt, you don't need this so much. But just to get you started, this is an easier, more relaxed approach to sewing it. Now, remembering on your overlocker, you are good to go sewing stretch. You just set it up and sew for stretch fabric. But if you're using your sewing machine, you will need to put in a stretch needle. Super important. If you don't put in a stretch needle, and not a ballpoint or a jersey needle, you need a stretch needle for this sort of t-shirting. If you don't get that, your thread will pucker and pull underneath. So change to a stretch needle now. And then we will go ahead and stitch this up. And also on your sewing machine, you'll need, I've got these long pins in here. I keep putting them back. I should put them somewhere else because they keep getting in the way. We're going to choose a lightning stitch on your sewing machine, which is a zigzag that looks like a bolt of lightning. Again, we did that in a different video. Okay, so we've got these little markings done here and here. So now what needs to happen is your shirt and rib need to come together. So we're going to put the join of the rib in the back of the shirt, so that obviously we don't have it, that you can see it at the front. So to do that, right side out, I'm just going to pull the shirt in to the inside of that ribbing, and then line up this first center mark, which is this one here, with this first center mark on the rib. See that? This pin will come out and then go through everything. And this pin will come out and go onto my super duper pin holder. Now, what happens here is this lets us now go around, and the reason we've done quarters is we can just stretch this ribbing here until this quarter mark, 1/8 mark, reaches this 1/8 mark. See, there's a bit of stretch that has to happen. So we're going to stretch it to that point there and then pin it. And because we're doing this on our table rather than as we whiz around on the machine, there's a little bit less stress for us in this first sort of step. So again, stretch it until those two pins line up. Take that pin out there and put it in there. Gosh, I really am missing doing classes in the shop. I do lots of private lessons, but I miss those group classes. I hope we can sort of all get back into it come sort of second half of the year. All right, so keep on stretching and pinning. And as we go, just want to make sure that that t-shirt material at the back sort of all lines up with everything, with the ribbing, you know, as we go. Am I freaking out the focus a little bit as I flip that up and down? I apologize. Done there. So, not much longer. And you can see the logic of it. You can see how helpful that is already. Like that. And in. And nearly there. And into there, and I think we are, yep, one more done. Alrighty, so now those two things are pinned together. Lovely. You guys are being very quiet tonight, no comments. You're obviously all enthralled. So this is what it looks like. Cool. We're now going to go ahead and stitch all those things together. Now, it's going to need to be turned inside out so that I can get to my pin. So I'm just going to reach through here, like so, and we're going to sew on it like this. So we're sort of sewing through the neck opening, and that way we can't accidentally sew into the bottom layers. So we've turned that now so that it is inside out, and we're going to go ahead and stitch this. All right, you ready? Let's do it. Overlocker to me. Overlocker. Resume. All right, so now, again, there's something about our human brain which says, let's start right here in the middle. But if you start right here in the middle, you're starting right in the middle of all this drama here. And we don't want that because it's just a little bit extra stress to get started with. So we're going to go ahead and start here in this little section that we've made. So that means we can go ahead and go up onto that bump and we don't have any dramas. So give this a little bit of a stretch out. Lift up your overlocker foot, and more importantly, well, also importantly, make sure you give that flywheel a bit of a rock so your needles are up. Needle position is going to play a big part in what we do as we go around this, particularly as we start sewing faster. So now I'm going to stretch this out, pop this in under the foot so that it's just touching the knife. I might zoom in a little bit more. You'll just have to put up my wrinkly fingers today. Do you see it's just touching the knife there? And we're going to go ahead and drop the foot down and take out this back pin, but first I'm going to hand turn so those needles are in the fabric, and it's going to hold it all together because we need to stretch a little bit while we sew. All right, so now that's in place. Foot's on the pedal. Being aware of the fact that I can't go over this pin, I can't go too crazy. I'm just going to do a few stitches to start me off. And then as that pin gets up to the knot foot, take it out. I can't stress this enough. A pin, a 0.11 cent pin will actually wreck $70 worth of knives. So you need to be patient and pull that pin out. When you pull that pin out, do it with the needles down in the fabric. So that pin now comes out, holding everything together with my finger, readjust, and then over we go. So as we get to the next pin, everything's been held together for us. We're just going to reconnect everything and then turn that flywheel, put the needles in the down position and take out that pin. I might put the pin cushion over here. Here we go. And off we go. Alrighty, and keep on going. Take out the next pin. Down we go. So you can see why those extra pins do slow things down, but in the end, it helps you get things straight for that first sort of round that you do. And we want to make sure you're shaving off a little bit of everything as you go. So a little bit of purple in the background. If you're shaving off a bit of purple, then you know that you're getting all of the fabric into the stitch. There we go. Oops, there we are. So I'm just stretching that fabric out if I need to so that the bottom meets the top, not sewing over those pins, needles. Oops, I didn't put my needle in the down position then. Bad penny. There we go. And keep on going. And so you don't have to put ribbing into stretch fabric either. You can put ribbing. Say you want to make yourself a hairdresser's cape. You know, put some ribbing into a shower curtain and you've got this cool hairdressing cape. So really, ribbing is a great way just to make a nice finished neck, nice and tidy. And the same rule applies. You just mark a quarter mark around on your base fabric and a quarter mark around on your ribbing. And then you're done. Pin it, stitch it. So we're nearly finished here. Now, when you get to the end, what you're going to do is you're going to overlock over where you've already been. And then when we get to about here, some people like to ease it off gradually, but I think that looks a bit messy. When I get to about here, I stop, turn this, and then pull it out while I'm sewing. So I'll show you what I mean. Oh, sorry, gang. Can we see that? All right. Just make sure I'm still straight. Because as I stop, that fabric relaxes and it all comes undone under here. So I need to take a minute just to pull it back up, which is why we like that needle to be in the fabric. And off we go. So I'm just going to overlap where I've already been to about there. And then I'm just going to do a sharp pull with my hand and then whoop, run that off. And we're done. Dun, 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 dun. Let's fold this out and check this out. Now, the thing about buying a baby's onesies is they cost a couple of bucks. But you can then go ahead and do something like this and really personalize it. So how cool is that? Da, 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 da. Gosh darn it, I love sewing in rib. So you can see here, this is a nice little finish. It looks nice and neat and tidy. We don't have a lot of puckering around the neck or anything. It looks nice and flat front and back. Whoops. And that is a new cool addition to this shirt. It lets you personalize it, lets you practice it. Now, a couple of tips. If your shirt is very wrinkly underneath the rib when you finish, it means that your rib was too tight and it's pulled that shirt fabric in too far. And if, vice versa, if when you finish, I'll show you on this one because it's a good example. See how the shape of this has completely changed? It was because I made the rib too big, and I made that rib too big because this rib is really thick and chonky and it just didn't do the bounciness that I needed for that small neckline. So that is caused by the rib being cut too large for the space. So if it's wrinkly, rib's cut too small. If the rib stretches it, the rib's been cut too large. Alrighty, so just to finish up, I want to point something out to you. The thing about baby stuff is it's small, so there tends to be this air of mystery to it that, oh, I can't do that. And sure, you can buy it for a couple of bucks, but there's an enormous satisfaction to be had in making kids stuff. And I love getting a big grown-ups, rip curl shirt or something and repurposing it and resizing it for kids. So you can actually do that. It's much easier than you think. And if you are looking for a pattern, guess what you have right here? For a couple of bucks, which is much cheaper than our Simplicity patterns here, you can get this onesie and just cut it up. Just cut the side seams off. Buy two. So you've got one that you cut up and one you can use as a sample. And to make this, it really is a matter of front and back together, band around the shoulders, band in the neck. The band at the shoulders gets caught at the side seam, and then underneath here, even though it's a bit odd shaped, this is still just a big round old band. So you can go ahead and do exactly what we did here, down here. And then if you want to, you can come on in and get yourself some cam snaps. You can buy a cam tool, or we have in the shop a big cam press that you can come in and use whenever you like. Doesn't cost you anything. You can just buy your snaps. And I think the snaps are $1. 5 sets of snaps for $1. So that's front and back sets, 5 for $1. So you can come in and give this a shot yourself and personalize it. So I think we're going to call that a day today. I have no idea. It feels like it might have run a bit short, but, you know, short and sweet. But I think this is a really cool technique, and I encourage anyone to give it a go. And the best way to give it a go is to repurpose something. I think what I might do, if you are interested, can you please comment so that I know I'm not wasting my time? I might come in on Monday night at 7 o'clock. That means everyone's had tea. And I'm actually going to do a video that will go for about an hour. And I'm going to show you how to make a t-shirt. And we're going to make a kid's t-shirt. We're going to cut a shirt up, use those pattern pieces, put it back together, and that will then give you all the techniques you need to make any size t-shirt. So if you'd like to do that, please let me know. But tonight, thank you very much for watching, and I am going to skedaddle. Alrighty guys, thanks. Bye.